3 years ago, I was $47,000 in debt. Not I had student loans debt. Not I bought a car I couldn't afford debt. I'm talking collection calls at 6 a.m. Ramen noodles for dinner 3 nights a week. The shame of telling friends I was busy when really I just couldn't afford the $12 cocktail they were ordering. I was working 60 hours a week at a job I hated. Every dollar I earned seemed to evaporate before it hit my account. I was smart, I was hardworking, and I was completely, utterly stuck. Then I met Mama Ajua. She was Ghanaian, 80 years old maybe. She cleaned houses in my neighborhood, ironically, including the house of my boss, the guy whose Porsche I parked every morning. I was crying in my car one afternoon, not subtle crying, ugly crying. She tapped on my window. "You have the face of someone who thinks hard work is the answer," she said. I didn't know what to mean. She told me to come to her apartment that Sunday, said she had something to show me, something her grandmother showed her, something that came from the Asante kingdom 400 years ago. I almost didn't go. I had laundry to do, I had walls to stare at while I panicked about my future. But I went. In her kitchen, over tea that tasted like herbs I couldn't name, Mama Ajua told me about Anansi. Not the cartoon, not the cute trickster from children's books. The real Anansi, the entrepreneur, the systems architect, the spider who understood wealth before Wall Street had a name. She said, Anansi didn't steal wisdom, he built a distribution network. You are not poor because you don't work hard. You are poor because you are trying to carry the pot alone. That sentence changed everything. Today, I run 2 businesses. I paid off that $47,000 in 18 months. I don't park anyone's car anymore. And I'm going to tell you exactly how Anansi did it, not as folklore, as a business case study, as a psychological framework, as the exact system I used to rebuild my life. This is not a children's story. This is the original entrepreneurship blueprint. And if you pay attention, it will change how you see every opportunity for the rest of your life. The Asante Kingdom. 17th century, what we now call Ghana. Imagine a world where gold was so common it was treated like gravel. Foreign traders would sail for months just to reach these markets. The wealth wasn't hidden. It was flowing, circulating, visible everywhere. But wisdom, knowledge, the kind that builds lasting empires, that was locked away. Nyame, the sky god, the original monopolist. Picture the most powerful CEO you've ever met, the one who controls the board, owns the majority shares, and still insists on signing every check personally. Now give that person divine power and infinite time. Nyame had amassed all the world's wisdom, every insight, every strategic advantage, every piece of knowledge that could transform a person's life, and he kept it in a clay pot. One pot. No copies, no distribution, no scalability, just a hoarded asset appreciating in value while the world outside remained ignorant. Does this sound familiar? It's the music industry before Spotify. It's taxi companies before Uber. It's every legacy business that thought owning the supply chain was enough while ignoring the delivery mechanism. Nyame wasn't evil. He was just operating on an old model. The model that says, if I control the resource, I control the power. He didn't realize that in a networked world, distribution beats ownership every single time. Here's what was happening in the Asante Kingdom while Nyame sat on his wisdom. Farmers were planting the same crops in the same way for generations, never improving their yield because no one taught them irrigation techniques that existed 3 villages over. Traders were being cheated in deals because they didn't understand contract law that was already established in neighboring regions. Young people were repeating the mistakes of their parents because knowledge died with the elders who never wrote it down. The wisdom existed, but it was trapped. And when value is trapped, everyone loses, including the person sitting on the pot. Because here's what Nyame didn't understand. Wisdom, unlike gold, is a network good. Its value increases the more people have it. Gold in a vault is still gold. Wisdom in a pot is just potential, dead capital. The market was crying out for a solution, for a platform, for someone who could bridge the gap between supply and demand. But who could approach Nyame? Who could solve the logistics problem? Who could build the infrastructure that didn't exist? Enter Anansi. Anansi was not impressive. He was small, maybe 2 inches long, 8 legs that made him look alien to the mammals who dominated the kingdom. No family connections, no military strength, no divine blessing that anyone recognized. He lived in the corners, the cracks, the spaces between the structures that powerful beings built and ignored. And that's exactly why he saw what they couldn't. While the lions and elephants and gorillas were competing to see who could be the strongest, Anansi was asking different questions. He wasn't looking at what he lacked. He was looking at what the system lacked. He saw Niamey's port not as an impenetrable fortress, but as a distribution failure. He saw the kingdom's ignorance not as a permanent condition, but as a market opportunity. He saw his own size not as a limitation, but as a strategic advantage, the ability to move through networks too small for others to navigate. This is the first psychological shift I want you to make today. Most people look at wealth and see a wall. They see the successful person, the established company, the dominant player, and they think, I could never compete with that. I don't have their resources. I don't have their strength. I don't have their head start. Anansi looked at Niamey and thought, I don't need to be stronger. I need to be smarter about systems. Here's the part Mama Ajoa explained that broke my brain open. Anansi's web. We think of a spider web as a trap, as something passive. You build it and wait. But Mama Ajoa said, the web is the original internet. Every strand is a connection. Every intersection is a node. The spider doesn't catch prey by being stronger than the fly. The spider catches prey by being better positioned. Think about what a web actually is. It's infrastructure. It's a network architecture that allows a small, vulnerable creature to capture value from a much larger environment. The web extends Anansi's reach far beyond his physical body. It allows him to be in multiple places at once. It creates leverage where a small amount of effort at the center creates large results at the edges. Most importantly, the web is scalable. One strand doesn't change much, but 100 strands? 1,000? Suddenly you are covering entire territories. You are becoming a platform. Before Anansi ever approached Niamey, he had spent years building his web, not randomly, strategically. He wove near the marketplaces where information flowed, near the elders' gathering spots where decisions were made, near the young people's hangouts where energy was high but wisdom was scarce. He was building the distribution network before he had the product. This is the second shift. Most entrepreneurs build a product, then look for customers. Anansi built the customer base, then went looking for the product. By the time Anansi approached Niamey, Anansi knew exactly who needed what wisdom. He knew the farmers struggling with irrigation. He knew the traders getting cheated. He knew the young people hungry for guidance. He had market intelligence that Niamey, sitting in his sky palace, could never access. This is why I was broke while working 60 hours a week. I was trying to be Niamey. I was trying to hoard my skills, sell them one-on-one, control every transaction. I was a consultant trading time for money. What I needed was to be Anansi, to build the web first, to create the infrastructure that would allow value to flow through me, not just from me. Anansi didn't demand an audience with Niamey. He didn't protest outside the Sky Palace or try to unionize the other small creatures. He made an offer. He said, "Great Niamey, I have noticed that your wisdom, magnificent as it is, remains difficult for the people to access. I have built something that might solve this problem. May I show you?" Notice the language. Not "you are hoarding and that's wrong," not "give me what you have," but "you have a problem, I have a solution, let's talk." This is the language of business, of partnership, of network thinking. Niamey was suspicious, of course, powerful incumbents always are, but he was also curious, and he was increasingly aware that his resource, as valuable as it was, wasn't creating the influence he expected. A resource that no one can access is just a heavy pot. So he agreed to hear Anansi out. Anansi laid out the challenge. The pot was too large for any single creature to carry. The distance to the villages was too great for a one-time journey. The delivery mechanism, carrying wisdom physically, was fundamentally broken. This wasn't a motivation problem. Niamey wasn't lazy, he wasn't cruel. It was an infrastructure problem, a systems problem, a scalability problem. Anansi proposed a new architecture.
He would build a network of connections that reached every corner of the kingdom. He would create nodes, trusted intermediaries who could receive wisdom and pass it along. He would develop a protocol for how wisdom was shared, verified, and built upon. In exchange, he asked for exclusive distribution rights. Not ownership, not control of the wisdom itself, just the right to be the platform through which it flowed. Nyame thought about this. He could keep trying to distribute wisdom himself, carrying the pot down from the sky every few decades, reaching a handful of creatures, exhausting himself in the process. Or he could let Anansi build the system, reach more people, create more impact, and Nyame would still be the source, still get the credit, still maintain his position as the origin point of all value. It was, in business terms, a no-brainer. But there was still the physical problem. The pot was heavy, Anansi was small, so how would he actually move it? Here is where Anansi proved he wasn't just clever, he was strategically brilliant. He didn't try to get stronger, he didn't spend years building muscle, he didn't invent a machine to lift the pot. He brought a partner, his son, Ntikuma. Not as an employee, not as hired help, as a co-founder. The arrangement was elegant in its simplicity. Ntikuma would sit up top the pot, Anansi would carry Ntikuma. Together, they would transport what neither could move alone. This is vertical integration.
Anansi handled the locomotion, the network, the connections, the movement through space. Ntikuma handled the stabilization, the balance, the security, the protection of the asset. Two weaknesses combined became a strength. Mama Ajoa paused here in her telling. She looked at me with those sharp eyes and said, "You think you need to be great alone. You think asking for help makes you weak." Anansi knew that partnership is not weakness, it is multiplication. I thought about that. I thought about how I had been trying to build my business as a solo act, how I was the marketer, the salesperson, the deliverer, the accountant, how I was breaking under the weight of a pot I was trying to carry alone. The moment I started looking for Ntikuma, partners who could stabilize what I moved, the game changed. I found a technical co-founder who could build what I designed. I found a salesperson who loved selling what I hated selling. I found operators who thrived in the details that exhausted me. Anansi didn't become less when he added Ntikuma. He became capable of carrying what he never could have touched alone. The journey wasn't easy. They climbed, thread by thread. The web strained. The pot swayed. Ntikuma had to adjust constantly, redistributing weight, anticipating shifts. There were moments when it seemed impossible, when the wind blew, when rain threatened, when other creatures, jealous, confused, threatened, tried to cut the strands beneath them. But they kept moving, because they weren't just carrying a pot, they were proving a concept. They were demonstrating that a new model was possible, that distribution could beat ownership, that networks could move what individuals could not. When they reached the top, when the pot was delivered, when the first village received its share of wisdom, everything changed. Not just for them, for everyone. Now, Anansi faced the final test. He had the pot. He had proven the system worked. He had exclusive distribution rights. He could have become the new Nyame. He could have sat on the wisdom, controlled the flow, created artificial scarcity, made himself the gatekeeper that everyone had to please. Many would have. Many do. But Anansi understood something that took me years to learn. Wealth is not a pot to sit on. Wealth is a web to build. He began to distribute, strategically, generously, systematically. To the farmers, he gave irrigation wisdom, and they grew more food, which they traded through his network. To the traders, he gave contract knowledge, and they made better deals which they documented using his protocols. To the young people, he gave guidance, and they became the next generation of network nodes, extending his reach even further. He didn't give everything away. He maintained the flow. He curated the distribution. He remained the essential connection point. But he created value for others first, and in doing so, he became indispensable. Here's what happened next. The wiser the kingdom became, the more prosperity they created. The more prosperity they created, the more they needed Anansi's network to manage it. The more they used his network, the stronger his position became. He didn't extract value, he facilitated it. And facilitation, at scale,
is the most profitable business model in existence. Think about it. Amazon doesn't make most of the products it sells. It facilitates. Uber doesn't own most of the cars. It facilitates. Airbnb doesn't own most of the properties. It facilitates. Anansi didn't own the wisdom. He facilitated its flow. And in a flowing system, the facilitator becomes the most valuable node. So, how do you use this? I sat in Mama Ajoa's kitchen for 3 hours that day. I asked her to repeat the story 3 times. I took notes on napkins. I drew webs on her tablecloth with my finger. And I emerged with what I now call the Anansi method. 3 moves, same sequence, every time. Move 1. Build the web before you need it. Most people wait until they have a product, then look for customers. Anansi spent years weaving connections, understanding needs, positioning himself at the intersections of information flow before he ever approached Nyame. I did this backwards for years. I built skills, then looked for people who needed them. When I flipped it, when I started joining communities, understanding their problems, mapping their needs before creating solutions, everything accelerated. Move 2. Find your Ntikuma. Identify what you cannot do, not what you don't want to do, what you genuinely cannot do or cannot do well. Then find the person for whom that thing is their genius, not their competence, their genius. Offer them partnership, equity, skin in the game. Make their success inseparable from yours. I found my Ntikuma in a developer who loved building what I loved designing. We split revenue 50-50. People thought I was crazy. That 50% of something massive is infinitely more than 100% of something tiny. Move 3. Become the platform, not the product. Stop selling your time. Stop trading hours for dollars. Start building systems where value flows through you. For me, this meant shifting from consulting, selling my advice one client at a time, to building a marketplace where coaches and clients connect through my platform. I take 15% of every transaction. I don't deliver the coaching. I don't find the clients. I maintain the web. And the web maintained grows, compounds, becomes self-sustaining. But Mama Ajoa gave me one more warning that day. She said the web breaks, storms come, new spiders try to cut your strands. You will have to rebuild again and again. The principle is eternal. The application is never finished. She was right. I've rebuilt my web 3 times in 3 years. Platform changes, algorithm shifts, partnerships that dissolved, competitors that emerged. Anansi's wisdom isn't a one-time trick. It's a way of seeing, a commitment to building networks rather than accumulating assets, to facilitating flow rather than hoarding stock. It's hard, it's uncertain, it's uncomfortable, but it's the only way I found to build real, sustainable, anti-fragile wealth. I want you to do something before this video ends. I want you to identify your distribution bottleneck. Not your motivation problem, not your skill problem, your logistics problem. Where is value stuck in your life because you haven't built the infrastructure to move it? Is it a relationship that could be a partnership but you're trying to carry the pot alone? Is it a skill you could teach but you're selling it by the hour instead of building the platform? Is it an opportunity you can see but you haven't woven the web to reach it? Comment below. I read every single one, and I respond to the people who are serious about building. Next, we're telling the opposite story. What happens when you have everything, gold, power, divine right, but you burn it all down because you never learned the lesson Anansi knew? The leadership psychology of Shango, the king who ruled through fear, who destroyed what he loved because he couldn't control his thunder. You don't want to miss it. Subscribe, hit the bell, build your web.